Hi, I'm Elian, I'm 24, and I've spent most of my life trying to prove myself to my family. My dad and I have always had a complicated relationship. He's the type who thinks family loyalty trumps everything. But today, on my birthday, while I was working a double shift, I got a text that completely shattered me. "We sold your car. Family comes first. Be grateful we." Where are you watching from? Comment below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories on family drama and emotional courage. The alarm blared at 5:30 a.m., cutting through the fog of my sleep like a sharp knife. I groaned, pulling the blanket over my head for one more precious minute, but the thought of my double shift at the diner dragged me up anyway. Birthdays had never been particularly special in my family. Mom had left early to work a second job when I was little. And Dad had always had a complicated way of showing he cared. Some days, I wondered if caring was just code for control. By the time I threw on my uniform, my stomach churned with both fatigue and a quiet, gnawing resentment. It wasn't just the work. I'd done this enough to know what was coming, but the idea of yet another birthday swallowed by obligations instead of celebration. Stepping outside, the morning air was crisp, and the faint smell of rain lingered in the streets. The world was alive, bustling, and oblivious to my small personal tragedy, and that alone made me feel even more invisible. At the diner, the lights were already on, steam rising from the coffee machines, and the smell of frying bacon mixing with the faint scent of bleach from the previous night's cleanup. I clocked in with a practiced smile, nodding to the few morning regulars. There was Mr. Thompson, the retired firefighter who always tipped generously, and Mrs. Lee, who had a penchant for blueberry pancakes at exactly 6:15 a.m. I moved through the motions, flipping eggs, pouring coffee, all while feeling an odd heaviness in my chest that I couldn't quite shake. By mid-morning, the diner was buzzing. The bell above the door jingled constantly, orders were shouted over the clatter of pans, and the espresso machine hissed impatiently as if echoing my inner tension. I was running on autopilot, my hands moving faster than my mind could keep up. That's when my phone buzzed in my pocket. Normally, I ignored texts while working, but something made me check it this time. It was Dad, and the message froze me in place. "We sold your car. Family comes first. Be grateful we." I blinked at the screen, thinking my eyes were playing tricks on me. My car. My old battered but beloved car. The one I had worked so hard for, saving every extra dollar from shifts just like this one. The one I had planned to drive to the small town I'd been dreaming of leaving for years. Sold? Without even a word? My fingers tightened around the edge of the counter as if the text alone had physical weight. "Elian? You okay back there?" A coworker's voice called. I tried to focus, attempted a small laugh, but my throat felt dry tight, as if all the air had been stolen. I muttered something that sounded like yes, though I could barely recognize my own voice. My mind raced. How could he do this? Dad had always justified his decisions as family first, but this felt like punishment. Punishment for what? For wanting independence? For daring to work my own way? My stomach twisted, and the eggs I was flipping seemed suddenly heavier than they had any right to be. By noon, the diner had quieted down. The morning rush had ended, leaving only a few regulars. I stepped outside during a break, needing air, and leaned against the brick wall. The sky was pale, clouds scudding lazily across the horizon. I dialed Mom, hands shaking. "Hey, Mom." My voice cracked before I could stop it. "Hey, sweetie, what's wrong?" Her concern was immediate, almost instinctive. "It's Dad, he sold my car. He texted me while I was working. Can you believe it?" There was a pause on the other end. "Then Elian, I didn't know he'd actually do that." Her words barely registered. Of course she hadn't known. She rarely did. She had always been caught between appeasing Dad and protecting me. I wanted to scream, to yell at both of them, to tell her I was tired of being invisible in my own family. But instead, I swallowed the lump in my throat, nodding to myself like I could pretend she could see me. Back inside, I sat in a corner during the slow lull, letting the text sink in further. Memories of Dad flickered across my mind. His raised voice over small mistakes, his passive-aggressive lessons, disguised as life advice, his constant reminders that family comes first, even when it meant I came last. My car had been my dream, a tangible goal I had clawed toward myself, And now it was gone. Stolen, not with malice, but with a sense of authority he believed justified. One of my co-workers, Mara, noticed my pale expression and leaned over. "You okay, Elian? You look like someone just stole your soul." I forced a weak smile, shaking my head. "Something like that," I admitted, letting my guard drop just enough. Mara's eyes softened. "Tell me about it later. Right now, let's just survive the lunch rush, okay?" I nodded, but internally I was reeling. Every order I took, every cup of coffee I poured, felt meaningless against the backdrop of that text. I tried to focus on the chatter around me. The laugh of a kid at the counter, the frustrated sigh of a customer whose eggs were overcooked. But the world seemed muted, as if reality itself was bending around my shock. Hours passed in a blur. I washed dishes, wiped tables, and smiled through the motions, but the betrayal clawed at me with each passing minute. Each sizzle from the stove sounded like a drumbeat, echoing the anger growing in my chest. I could almost feel the car slipping away from me again, like a phantom pulling me backward into disappointment and helplessness. During a rare quiet moment, I stepped out back to smoke, the faint scent of rain on the pavement mixing with fried grease and coffee. My hands shook, my chest tightened, and I could feel tears forming but fought them back. I had never cried in front of coworkers, never let my frustration spill where anyone could see. And yet, the text wasn't just words, it was a declaration. A line crossed. A betrayal. I replayed the message over and over. Family comes first. What did that even mean? If family came first, why did it feel like I had been shoved aside, like my dreams didn't matter? My car had been more than just a vehicle. It was my independence, my late-night drives to think, my small victories stacked on top of years of work. Dad had taken that from me. And the rationalizations in his words only made the knife twist deeper. By the time my shift ended, the sun was dipping low, casting orange streaks across the parking lot. Exhausted, I slumped into my carless driveway, feeling the weight of the betrayal settle over me. I thought about my life, the choices I had made, the sacrifices, and the quiet hope that one day, I could leave, make something of myself on my own terms. And yet here I was, staring at the empty space where my car should have been, feeling the sting of Dad's justification. I sat on the curb for a long while, letting the city sounds wash over me. The distant hum of traffic, the laughter of kids nearby, the clatter of a neighbor closing a garage door. Everything felt ordinary, and yet my world had shifted in a single message. My birthday, a day I had hoped to mark with something small but personal, had become a reminder of everything I had lost and the emotional distance I had to bridge with my family. Finally, I pulled out my phone again. A part of me wanted to reply, to fight back, to demand answers. Another part of me wanted to do nothing, to let the message settle like dust over old dreams. I typed, erased, typed again. Nothing felt right. So I set it aside and just sat, letting the sun sink further, letting the betrayal burn quietly into my bones. That night, as I trudged inside, exhausted from both the physical work and the emotional storm, I knew something had shifted inside me. I wasn't sure what the next step was, but one thing was clear. Nothing would ever feel the same again. My birthday was over, my car was gone, and for the first time, I felt the weight of my own independence slipping through my hands. But I also felt a spark, a quiet determination, that maybe I wouldn't let it stay gone forever. I sat on my bedroom floor, knees pulled to my chest, staring blankly at the cracked linoleum beneath me. My phone still rested in my hand, the glow of Dad's text illuminating my tear-streaked face. Family comes first. The words were like a hammer banging against my chest, each echo making it harder to breathe. I couldn't make sense of them. I'd always known Dad had strong opinions about loyalty and family, but this felt like a betrayal, one I hadn't anticipated. The house was quiet, the low hum of the refrigerator and the distant rumble of cars outside the only sounds accompanying my thoughts. I could feel the exhaustion from my double shift clinging to me like a heavy coat. But it wasn't just fatigue, it was the weight of realization. My family had always been complicated, sure, but I was beginning to see just how much control had been layered into every interaction, every decision. I thought about the past few years, all the little moments I had brushed off as normal. Dad insisting I attend family gatherings I didn't want to go to. subtly reminding me that choices weren't mine to make alone. Mom quietly agreeing with him, her soft, maybe he's right, adding to my guilt. And now the car. Sold without my knowledge, without even a conversation. The betrayal wasn't just the loss of the vehicle. It was the confirmation that my dreams, my independence, my small victories, they didn't matter to them the way they mattered to me. I sank back further against the wall, letting my thoughts spiral. And then something unusual happened. A flicker of memory crossed my mind. A conversation Dad had had with my older brother a few months back. I hadn't thought much of it then, just casual talk, but now it felt significant. I remembered the slight smirk on Dad's face as he mentioned some investment for the family. A vague plan that involved money I hadn't been privy to. Could the car have been sold to cover that? Or worse, to benefit someone else? The thought burned, igniting a surge of curiosity and suspicion. I needed answers, but I also needed clarity. Pulling my laptop onto my lap, I began scrolling through my bank records, receipts, and past conversations. Every detail seemed mundane at first, bill payments, minor household expenses, but then I noticed patterns. Dad had been quietly funneling money into accounts I didn't know about, and the timing of certain purchases aligned eerily with the disappearance of my car. It wasn't just a birthday surprise gone wrong. It was part of a bigger picture, a layer of family dynamics I hadn't fully comprehended. I leaned back, running my hands through my hair, feeling a mixture of frustration and awakening. All the times I'd thought I was helping, supporting the family, making sacrifices, they had been expected, almost as if my efforts were a given, not choices I had made willingly. The betrayal wasn't only in the car. It was in the subtle, everyday decisions that had chipped away at my sense of agency for years. I felt a quiet rage building, a determination that this time, I wouldn't just be a passive observer in my own life. The phone buzzed again. I flinched, unsure whether to check it, fearing more disappointment. It was a text from my best friend, Jenna. "Hey, I know you said you were busy, but are you okay? You sounded off earlier." I typed back quickly, words spilling out almost before I realized it. "Dad sold my car today. I don't even know what to feel anymore. Everything feels messed up." Jenna's response came almost immediately. "Oh, Elian. I'm so sorry. That's awful. He had no right. You worked so hard for that. Do you want me to come over?" Her offer was a lifeline. I hadn't realized how isolated I had felt until that moment. The betrayal had made the house feel suffocating, and the weight of my thoughts was unbearable. I agreed, and within 30 minutes, she was knocking gently on my door, carrying a small box of cookies and her calming presence. We sat on the floor together, cookies in hand, and I let myself unravel a little. I told her everything, the text, my suspicions about Dad, the memories that had started to resurface. She listened without judgment, occasionally nodding, her expression one of quiet understanding. "Elian," she said softly, "you've always been responsible for too much. It's not just about the car. He's been controlling things behind the scenes your whole life." Her words struck a chord. I had always known Dad had a strong personality, but Jenna's perspective made me see it differently. The betrayal was systemic, woven into the family fabric in a way I hadn't been ready to acknowledge. It wasn't just one day, one car. It was years of subtle manipulation. As evening approached, Jenna suggested we take a walk outside. The sky was painted in shades of lavender and gold, the cool breeze brushing against my cheeks. I needed movement, a way to escape the oppressive weight of my room and my thoughts. We walked silently for a few blocks, the sounds of the neighborhood, kids calling to each other, distant lawnmowers, cars passing, filling the spaces between us. "I hate that he can do this to you," Jenna said finally. "And I hate that you feel like you're the one at fault. You've worked so hard, Elian. This isn't about being ungrateful, it's about respect. He's crossed a line." I swallowed hard, nodding, but inside I felt a strange mixture of sadness and resolve. The betrayal had left a raw wound, but it also sparked a flicker of clarity. I couldn't control Dad's actions, or the ways my family had historically undervalued me, but I could control how I responded. That thought was both terrifying and liberating. We returned home, and as I closed the door behind us, I noticed a small envelope sitting on my desk. It was addressed in Dad's handwriting. My heart skipped. Could it be an apology? Some explanation? I hesitated, then carefully opened it. Inside was a note, brief and almost dismissive. Don't overreact. It's for the family. You'll understand one day. Elian, be grateful we made this choice. I crumpled the note, anger and disbelief surging again. Gratitude? After everything? The audacity of it made my blood boil. And yet, beneath the anger, there was a new sensation, determination. I realized that I couldn't rely on my family to validate my dreams or respect my choices. I had to find my own path, my own way of being valued. Later that night, lying awake in bed, I replayed moments from the past few weeks, months, even years. Small incidents that had once seemed trivial now fit together like pieces of a puzzle. Dad's subtle lectures, his insistence on controlling money, his careful favoritism toward my older brother. The patterns were unmistakable, and the betrayal of the car was simply the culmination of a long history of quiet manipulation. I thought about my life outside the house, the work I did, the small achievements I had earned on my own. I had pushed through college classes while working part-time jobs. I had saved every extra dollar I could. And I had celebrated small victories quietly because my family never seemed interested. Now the car was gone, but the realization hit me. Nothing they could take would erase my effort, my resilience, or my dreams. By the time sleep finally claimed me, it was tinged with resolve rather than despair. The betrayal had cut deep, leaving a raw, aching wound, but it also shone a light on truths I had been avoiding. Dad's choices were not about me. They were about control. And while I couldn't change him, I could change myself. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose. The house felt the same, but I didn't. Every interaction, every word exchanged with Dad or Mom, would now be seen through the lens of understanding and self-preservation. I realized I had to navigate my emotions carefully, not let the betrayal define me entirely, but also not ignore it. Small plans began to form in my mind. Ways to reclaim independence, to protect myself emotionally, and to quietly take steps toward a life where Dad's manipulations couldn't reach me. Even as I got ready for another day at work, I felt a subtle shift inside me. The anger, the shock, and the hurt were still there, but they were tempered by a growing awareness of my own power and agency. The betrayal had been devastating, yes, but it had also opened my eyes to truths I could no longer ignore. And in that quiet morning, with the sun spilling weakly through the blinds, I made a silent promise to myself. I wouldn't just survive this betrayal. I would rise from it stronger, smarter, and more determined than ever. I would uncover the hidden truths, understand the motivations behind Dad's actions, and most importantly, reclaim my life without waiting for anyone's permission. The car was gone. The trust had been broken. But for the first time in a long time, I felt the stirrings of control, of independence, of self-worth. And that, I realized, was something no one, not even Dad, could ever take away from me. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen with a tension I couldn't shake. The sun streamed lazily through the blinds, highlighting the small dust motes floating in the air. Dad sat at the table, newspaper spread wide, coffee steaming in front of him. The smell of brewed coffee and toast should have been comforting, but instead, it felt heavy, like a prelude to the storm I knew was coming. My stomach twisted. Today, I had to face him, had to voice the anger and hurt that had been building silently inside me for months. I set my bag down and tried to steady my breathing. "Dad," I said, my voice just above a whisper. He looked up, eyebrows raised, smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. That smirk, it was always there when he thought he had the upper hand. "Yes, Elian," he said casually, as if he had no idea what storm I was carrying into the room. I gritted my teeth, fighting the urge to walk away, to let the words die on my lips. "We need to talk," I said, finally louder, firmer. "About the car." His smirk didn't falter. "The car? We discussed it," he said, flipping a page of the newspaper like I wasn't even speaking. "Family comes first, Elian. You'll understand eventually." I felt my pulse spike, heat rising to my cheeks. "Understand? Understand that you sold something I worked for, without asking me? Without even telling me?" My hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from rage. Mom shuffled into the kitchen quietly, her soft footsteps almost apologetic. "Elian," she started, but I shook my head. I didn't want apologies. I wanted honesty. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted them to feel the weight of what they had done. Dad leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, pretending calm. Elian, we did what was best for the family. You need to accept that. Sometimes sacrifices are necessary. Sacrifices. That word made my stomach turn. My car wasn't a sacrifice. It was a part of my independence, a piece of myself that they had taken. You call selling my car a sacrifice? I shot back. I worked for that car. Every extra shift, every hour I stayed late at work, it was mine. How is that a sacrifice for the family if it hurts me? Dad sighed, a long measured exhale, as if my anger were an inconvenience. You're too young to understand how family works. Life isn't about just what you want, Elian. Sometimes you have to put the family first. I put in more effort than anyone. I yelled, my voice cracking. I've given up my time, my money, my energy, and what do I get? The car I worked for is gone, and you act like I'm the one in the wrong. Mom's eyes were filled with worry, but I saw the tiny flicker of guilt there too. She spoke softly. He doesn't mean it the way it sounds. Doesn't mean it? I echoed bitterly. Mom, it's exactly what it sounds like. I'm tired of pretending everything's fine. I'm tired of being expected to accept whatever he decides. I'm tired of being invisible. Dad's jaw tightened. I could see his frustration simmering beneath the surface now. Elian, watch your tone. I'm trying to teach you responsibility, respect. I slammed my hand against the counter, the noise echoing through the kitchen. Respect? You think respect comes from taking away what I earned and telling me to be grateful? That's not respect, Dad. That's control. That's manipulation. Mom gasped, her hand covering her mouth. I realized then that I had crossed a line, but I couldn't stop. The floodgates had opened, and every suppressed thought, every quiet resentment from years of feeling small, was pouring out. Dad slammed his newspaper down. Enough, Elian. You think you know everything. You think you've suffered more than anyone else? You have no idea what it's like to hold a family together, to make the hard decisions. I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow in the quiet kitchen. Hard decisions? You sold my car to cover who knows what, without even telling me. And that's supposed to be a hard decision for me to understand? You've been controlling me my whole life, Dad. Always telling me what's right, always pretending you know better. But this is different. This is personal. The tension was electric. I could feel it crackling in the air, thick and suffocating. Mom shifted uneasily, trying to mediate, but I waved her off. No, Mom. This isn't about mediating. This is about facing the truth. Dad, you can't keep making decisions for me and expecting me to be grateful. I have a life, too, and you're trying to dictate every part of it. Dad's face reddened, veins visible in his neck. His hands shook slightly as he pointed a finger at me. You're acting like a child. I'm doing what I think is right, and you're blind to it. One day, you'll understand that family means sacrifice. I understand family. I shot back. I just don't understand why that has to come at the cost of my independence, my choices, my dreams. For a moment, the room fell silent. Only the faint ticking of the kitchen clock and the hum of the refrigerator filled the air. I could feel my chest heaving, sweat forming at my hairline, but I couldn't stop now. I had to make him see. And don't act like you care about me. I continued, my voice lower, sharper now. All these years I've been bending, adjusting, giving, and still, nothing's ever enough. You think controlling my choices is caring? You think selling my car while I worked a double shift on my birthday is teaching me responsibility? That's cruel. That's manipulation. Dad's eyes flickered with something, maybe anger, maybe regret. I wasn't sure. Elian, you don't know what you're saying, he muttered. I know exactly what I'm saying, I snapped. And I'm done staying quiet. I'm done pretending everything you do is for my own good. I have a life. I have dreams. And I will not let you, or anyone, take them away from me. Mom reached out tentatively, as if to soothe me, but I pulled back. Mom, don't try to make this about keeping peace. This is about truth. I've held back for too long. My words seemed to hang in the air, heavy and undeniable. I could see Dad struggle with them, his rigid posture faltering slightly, For once, he didn't have a ready response. There was no smirk, no dismissive tone, just a silence that screamed louder than any argument. I turned away, feeling the heat of tears welling in my eyes, and walked to the window, looking out at the street below. The neighborhood was alive with ordinary life. Kids biking, neighbors chatting, but none of it mattered. All I could see was the realization that the betrayal wasn't just about the car. It was about everything. It was about control, manipulation, and the ways my family had consistently undervalued my autonomy. I hope you understand now, I said softly without looking back. I'm not going to stay quiet anymore. I won't let you control my life or dictate my happiness. Not ever. The weight of my words lingered. Dad sat frozen, his face unreadable, while Mom's eyes glistened with emotion. I knew there was no immediate resolution. None of this would be fixed in a single conversation, but I also knew that speaking my truth had shifted something. For the first time, I felt the tiniest spark of power, a recognition that I could set boundaries, even against the people who had always dominated my world. Later that evening, after the confrontation had settled into an uneasy silence, I retreated to my room, exhausted but alive in a way I hadn't felt before. The adrenaline had faded, leaving a quiet, simmering energy. I replayed every word, every inflection, every flash of emotion. I had made my stance clear. I would no longer be silent. I would no longer accept betrayal as a normal part of family life. As night fell, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The confrontation had been draining, but I felt a strange sense of clarity. The car was gone, the betrayal still raw, but I had taken the first step in reclaiming my voice, in asserting my presence, and in refusing to be manipulated. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with tension and emotional landmines, but for the first time, I felt I had begun to chart it on my own terms. I didn't know what Dad would do next, or how Mom would process everything, but I knew one thing with certainty. I had found the courage to confront the very people who had defined my limits for so long. That courage, I realized, was mine alone. And it was a start. The morning after the confrontation, I woke with a restless energy pulsing through me. The fight with Dad had drained me emotionally, yet left a spark I hadn't felt before. An understanding that I could no longer let my family dictate my life. I got out of bed, stretched, and took a deep breath, feeling the cool air on my skin. Today, I decided, I wouldn't react impulsively. I would act strategically. I started by organizing my finances. Sitting at my small desk, I pulled out my old notebooks, lists of savings, and digital spreadsheets. For the first time, I reviewed everything with a calculating eye. My paycheck deposits, side hustles, freelance work, and the small investments I had quietly been making over the past year. Each number told a story. Proof of my independence, of my ability to take control of my life without needing permission from anyone. Next, I created a plan. Not revenge in the cruel sense, but a subtle reclaiming of power. The first step: reclaim the car. I began checking online listings, visiting used car dealerships, and calling private sellers, all under the guise of casual browsing. I needed it to be realistic, within my reach and manageable. Each car I considered, each phone call I made, felt like a small victory. A silent defiance against Dad's attempt to control me. At work, I began channeling my emotions into productivity. Each order I took, each tray I carried, I did with precision and focus. My coworkers noticed the change. Mara leaned over during a quiet moment. "You seem different today," she said, a curious smile on her face. "I feel different," I admitted quietly. "Like I finally see a way to take control, even if it's just small steps." By midweek, my plan had expanded. I signed up for a part-time weekend gig tutoring high school students in math and science, not just to earn extra money, but to create a buffer of independence that Dad couldn't touch. Each tutoring session reinforced a sense of self-worth, reminding me that I could earn, learn, and grow on my own terms. One evening, as I returned home from a long shift, I found Dad in the living room, flipping through TV channels. He glanced at me, eyebrows slightly raised. "You're awfully busy," he said casually. I forced a neutral expression. "Yeah, trying to make the most of my time," I replied, careful not to reveal my intentions too soon. Inside, however, I was calculating every next move, every small step that would build my independence until it was untouchable. I also realized that strategic revenge didn't have to be loud or vindictive. It could be quiet, methodical, and powerful. I started documenting every interaction with Dad, every subtle attempt to control me, every instance of manipulation. Not to use as a weapon against him, but as a reminder for myself, a record that I was capable of recognizing and resisting patterns I had once tolerated unconsciously. One night, while reviewing my notes, I realized I could also reclaim my dignity in small ways at home. I started saying no when Dad asked me to do things that felt controlling or unnecessary, like taking on extra household chores at inconvenient times or attending gatherings I didn't want to attend. At first he frowned, his eyes narrowing, but I stood firm. Each no was a reinforcement of my boundaries, and each time he challenged me, I responded calmly, deliberately, not with anger but with unwavering confidence. Meanwhile, the car search had progressed. I found a listing for a used vehicle similar to mine, reliable, affordable, and in great condition. My heart raced as I called the seller, arranging a test drive for the next day. The thought of finally reclaiming something I had worked so hard for was exhilarating, almost intoxicating. I imagined pulling into my driveway, the car shining under the morning sun, as if the world were finally acknowledging my effort and resilience. In the evenings, I also began cultivating my emotional armor. I journaled extensively, writing down my fears, my anger, my small victories. Each entry strengthened my resolve and clarified my strategy. Independence first, empowerment second, and recognition of my own worth as the ultimate revenge. I realized that by becoming untouchable in my own life, I would demonstrate to Dad that control was an illusion he could no longer wield over me. A subtle twist occurred when I discovered that my younger cousin had overheard Dad talking about the car before it was sold. She told me in hushed tones that Dad had been frustrated because I had been saving for other goals, like moving out or investing in personal projects. Hearing this made my blood boil, but also reinforced the necessity of strategy. This wasn't just about a car. It was about reclaiming my autonomy and showing that my efforts and aspirations were valid, regardless of Dad's approval. I also began leveraging small victories in daily life to build momentum. I negotiated a better shift schedule at work, giving myself more time to focus on my side projects and car hunt. I started meal prepping, managing my expenses more efficiently, and even enrolled in a free online course that had always intrigued me. Each step was deliberate, each choice a reinforcement of self-assertion. One afternoon, while finalizing the financing for the car I had chosen, I ran into Mara at the diner. "You seem unstoppable lately," she said with a wink. I smiled, feeling a sense of pride I hadn't felt in years. "I guess I finally realized I don't need anyone's permission to live my life," I admitted. Buying the car was an emotional experience. Sitting behind the wheel for the first time, I felt a mixture of triumph, relief, and quiet satisfaction. This wasn't just about the vehicle. It was about proving to myself that I could create change and claim what was mine, without waiting for approval. I drove slowly through the neighborhood, savoring each moment, knowing that Dad's decision no longer held power over me. Back at home, Dad noticed the car parked outside. His expression was unreadable, a mixture of surprise and suppressed irritation. I didn't need to explain anything. The message was clear. I had reclaimed what was mine, and I had done so calmly, deliberately, and on my own terms. I also began setting boundaries more assertively in daily interactions. When Dad questioned my plans or suggested I follow his way, I responded with quiet confidence, redirecting conversations without aggression. Mom noticed the change, a mixture of relief and concern in her eyes. I realized that self-assertion didn't mean alienating family. It meant establishing a space where my decisions were respected. Strategic revenge took on new forms. I pursued opportunities one had previously ignored, joined local workshops to improve my skills, and even began considering a short move to a nearby city for work experience. Each step reinforced my autonomy and slowly eroded Dad's control. I wasn't seeking to punish him. I was demonstrating, to myself and silently to him, that my life could not be dictated by his manipulations. One evening, as I sat in my room reflecting, I realized that the greatest revenge wasn't anger, it was empowerment. Each choice I made, each boundary I enforced, each small success accumulated into a life that Dad couldn't control. The feeling was exhilarating. I could feel the shift in the family dynamic, subtle but unmistakable. Dad's authority had limits, and I was learning to define them firmly and respectfully. Even subtle everyday interactions became part of the strategy. I started cooking meals independently, taking charge of my finances, and initiating conversations that mattered to me. Each act reinforced my self-assertion, proving that independence didn't have to be loud to be effective. Finally, as the week drew to a close, I stood in my bedroom, looking at the reflection in the mirror. Elian, the same person who had felt powerless, betrayed, and angry, stood taller now, her shoulders squared, her gaze steady. The car, the job, the new routines, and the strategies weren't just actions. They were statements. I had reclaimed my life, not with violence or cruelty, but with determination, foresight, and quiet defiance. And as I sat in the car that I had worked for, planning my next steps and feeling the hum of the engine beneath me, I understood something crucial. The real power wasn't in revenge for its own sake. It was in reclaiming myself. Every small decision, every boundary enforced, every victory achieved was proof that I was no longer a passive player in my own life. I was the strategist, the decision-maker, the one in control. The shift from helpless anger to calculated empowerment had changed me completely. The betrayal of my family had sparked a transformation I hadn't expected, and I was determined to carry it forward. Each day, I would continue building independence, asserting boundaries, and creating a life that no one, not even Dad, could undermine. In the quiet moments, late at night, I reflected on how much I had grown. The strategic revenge was not about confrontation anymore. It was about self-assertion, about proving to myself that I had the strength, intelligence, and resilience to reclaim what was mine. And in that understanding, I finally felt the calm satisfaction of someone who had been betrayed, but had risen above it, quietly and deliberately, stronger than ever. The first morning after reclaiming my independence, I sat on the edge of my bed, hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea, staring out the window at the sun spilling gold across the street. The house was quiet, Dad was still asleep, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of calm, not numbness, not exhaustion, but clarity. I had survived the confrontation, navigated the betrayal, and asserted myself without losing sight of who I was. The lesson was settling in slowly, like a seed taking root. Empowerment didn't come from others recognizing your worth. It came from claiming it for yourself. I spent the morning making a list, small, tangible steps that reflected my growth over the past weeks. Budgeting my money, scheduling tutoring sessions, finalizing car payments, and setting boundaries with family. Each item was more than an action. It was a reminder of the resilience I had cultivated. For the first time, I felt ownership over my life, and with it came a responsibility I embraced willingly. I wasn't just reacting anymore, I was creating. Later, Mom came into my room, hesitating at the doorway. Her eyes held a mixture of relief and something else. Perhaps worry, perhaps admiration. "Elian," she said softly, "I can see you've changed. You seem stronger." I nodded, feeling a twinge of affection, but also a distance I had carefully maintained. "I've learned a lot, Mom. About myself, about all of us. I can't change Dad, and I can't control everything he does. But I can control how I respond, and I can protect my own space now." She lingered, fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve. "I think you're right, and I wish I'd realized it sooner. I'm proud of you." The words surprised me, but I didn't let them soften my resolve. This wasn't a moment to let family dynamics distract me from the lessons I had learned. I had learned that pride and control often masked fear, and that even those who cared about me could act in ways that hurt deeply. Acknowledgement was welcome, but it didn't erase years of underestimating my autonomy. I spent the afternoon organizing my car papers and insurance, each signature and document a quiet symbol of self-assertion. The process was methodical, deliberate, and satisfying. I could feel the tangible weight of my independence in my hands. It was a stark contrast to the helplessness I had felt weeks ago, and I allowed myself a small, victorious smile. This was more than transportation. It was the embodiment of reclaiming control. That evening, I decided to confront my feelings toward Dad one last time. Not to argue, but to establish a lasting boundary. He was sitting in the living room, the evening news playing softly. I took a deep breath, steadying the mixture of anger, disappointment, and understanding that had settled in my chest. Dad. I began, keeping my voice calm. I need to say something important. He glanced at me, curiosity flickering in his eyes. Go on, he said cautiously. I understand you think you're doing what's best. But I need you to know something. My choices, my effort, and my life are mine. I can appreciate guidance, but I won't accept control. The car being sold hurt me, yes, but it also showed me that I need to stand up for myself. I've learned how to do that, and I hope you can respect it. There was silence. He seemed momentarily at a loss for words, perhaps realizing that this wasn't a battle he could control. I see, he muttered finally, his tone less commanding than usual. I nodded. I don't expect apologies or validation. I just need my boundaries respected from now on. For the first time, there was a genuine pause, a moment of mutual understanding without manipulation or judgment. Dad didn't smile, and he didn't smirk, but he also didn't argue. It was a quiet acknowledgement, subtle but significant. In the following days, I continued to cultivate the lessons I had internalized. I focused on my work, balancing shifts and tutoring while planning small personal projects I had long postponed. Each step reinforced the realization that independence was more satisfying than rebellion. It wasn't about defeating Dad or punishing him. It was about proving, to myself, that I could thrive regardless of others' approval. I also began documenting my reflections, jotting down not only what I had done but why. The betrayal had been painful, but it had also been instructive. I realized that trust could be fragile, that family dynamics were complex, and that personal boundaries were essential for mental and emotional health. Writing helped me process lingering frustration and turn it into insight. A week later, I drove the car down to a quiet park nearby, windows down, engine humming softly. I sat in the driver's seat, letting the late afternoon sun warm my face, and thought about the journey I had taken over the past month. Each challenge, each confrontation, and each moment of self-assertion had taught me a fundamental truth. Personal power was earned, nurtured, and defended. It wasn't taken from someone else. It was cultivated quietly, deliberately, with intention. Even small interactions at home became opportunities for growth. When Dad asked for advice on household tasks, I offered suggestions without hesitation, asserting myself calmly, without anger. Mom started including me in conversations more, recognizing my input as valid. I realized that resolution didn't necessarily mean reconciliation. It meant clarity, boundaries, and the ability to engage without compromising myself. I also reached out to Jenna, my friend who had been a confidant through the turmoil. Over coffee, I reflected on the lessons I had learned. It's strange, I told her. The betrayal hurt so much, but it also pushed me to discover strength I didn't know I had. I've learned that independence isn't just about being alone. It's about knowing you can thrive no matter what happens around you. Jenna nodded, smiling knowingly. That's powerful, Elian. Most people never reach that understanding. You've turned pain into something constructive. That's rare. I smiled, feeling a quiet sense of pride. This wasn't about proving anything to Dad or even to anyone else. It was about honoring myself and my capacity to grow from hardship. As weeks turned into months, I implemented more personal projects. Budgeting for a short trip I had always wanted, enrolling in an online creative writing course, and exploring volunteer opportunities in my community. Each choice reinforced my independence, my self-confidence, and my ability to act decisively. I wasn't running from the past. I was transforming it into fuel for my personal growth. One evening, while organizing my car's glove compartment, I found a small, forgotten note from Dad. An old birthday card tucked behind the registration papers. It read, "Happy birthday, Elian. We love you." My chest tightened. For years, love and control had been intertwined in ways that confused me. And the note reminded me of that complexity. I didn't feel resentment in that moment, just understanding. Love could exist even when actions were misguided. And learning to navigate that truth was part of maturity. I also discovered the importance of communication and selective transparency. While I maintained my boundaries with Dad, I chose moments to share achievements, victories, and decisions that mattered. This wasn't seeking approval, it was asserting presence and cultivating mutual respect, while protecting my emotional space. The lessons extended beyond family dynamics. I realized that self-assertion applied to work, friendships, and personal projects. Boundaries weren't walls. They were bridges that allowed relationships to flourish on terms that honored my needs. Independence wasn't selfish. It was a prerequisite for healthy connections. Reflecting further, I recognized that betrayal, while painful, was an opportunity for transformation. Every emotional wound had forced me to assess my values, my priorities, and my resilience. The confrontations, the silent manipulations, they had all been catalysts for profound self-discovery. I now understood that my life's trajectory could no longer be dictated by others, and that empowerment was the most enduring form of revenge. Not vindictive acts, but the quiet assertion of agency. On a quiet Sunday morning, I drove to a nearby coffee shop, parked my car, and sat with my journal open. I wrote about the journey, my anger, my strategies, my small victories, and the lessons that would guide me in the future. Each sentence was a declaration of growth, each reflection a testament to resilience. I felt a calm satisfaction, knowing that I had not only survived but transformed. Later that day, I called Jenna, excited to share some new plans. A weekend workshop for personal development, a volunteer project I had chosen, and even a small trip to explore a nearby town I'd never visited. Her encouragement reinforced my realization that empowerment often came from both action and support. Surrounding yourself with those who validate your growth, but don't dictate it, was essential. Finally, I returned home that evening and noticed Dad reading in his chair. He looked up as I entered, but there was no smirk, no comment, just a brief nod. I realized that my transformation had shifted the dynamic. The confrontation, the strategic moves, they had changed how he saw me. More importantly, they had changed how I saw myself. I no longer needed his validation, just his recognition of my independence. And even that was optional. As I settled into bed that night, I reflected on everything I had endured and learned. The betrayal had been painful, the confrontation intense, and the process of reclaiming autonomy challenging. Yet, each moment had built resilience, insight, and clarity. I understood now that life wouldn't always be fair, that people, even those we love, might hurt us, and that true strength came from asserting yourself with courage and grace. I closed my eyes, feeling a profound sense of peace. I had reclaimed my life, learned the value of boundaries, discovered the power of strategic action, and transformed betrayal into self-empowerment. The lessons were clear, tangible, and lasting. Independence is cultivated, not given. Boundaries protect growth and relationships alike. Strategic action is more powerful than impulsive retaliation. Betrayal can be a catalyst for self-discovery. True empowerment comes from asserting agency, not seeking revenge. And with that understanding, I drifted into sleep, confident that no future betrayal could shake the foundation I had carefully, deliberately built. I had learned, grown, and transformed. And that, ultimately, was the greatest resolution of all.